All right, what are you doing back here? Who are you waiting on?
Waiting on a driver? What's the reason for the contact?
Loitering back here, taking notes. This area's had problems.
Understood. I'm federal law enforcement, on duty. I can be verified through dispatch or supervisor.
Don't lie, man. You don't look like federal. I don't want to play games. You're under arrest.
Hey, hold on.
What happens when a local cop decides a calm black man doesn't look like a federal agent and keeps escalating even after the guy says he's Secret Service? The answer gets ugly fast because the body cam didn't just catch a bad attitude. It caught misconduct in real time. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, state or country. And if you're here for stories where power trips backfire and accountability actually shows up, hit like and subscribe. These are the ones that need daylight. All right? Here's what went down. It started mid-conflict behind a shopping plaza, near the service lane between a pharmacy and a coffee spot. Early evening. People coming and going. Cameras on every corner. A couple cars idling at the curb. The kind of place officers love because they can check things out and feel in control. Officer Ryan Kessler had Malik Carter pinned in that invisible box cops use when they want compliance without saying the word, close distance, squared shoulders, one hand hovering near his belt, the other gesturing like it was directing traffic. Kessler kept issuing commands. Turn around, hands visible, don't reach for anything. Malik didn't match his energy. He stayed still, he spoke slow, he kept his hands away from his pockets. And Kessler hated that. Because Malik wasn't acting scared, he wasn't babbling, he wasn't begging to be let go. He was just steady, professional. The exact thing a power-tripping officer reads as attitude. Kessler demanded to know what Malik was doing back there. Malik gave a simple answer through his calm tone and minimal movement. He was waiting on a driver, and he wasn't doing anything illegal. That should have been the end. It wasn't. Kessler started building a story out loud. Suspicious person, loitering, possible trespass. Then he tried the classic trap. Rapid-fire questions meant to trip you up. Where do you live? Why are you here? What's in your bag? What's in the vehicle? Who are you meeting? You could hear the shift. It wasn't about safety, it was about dominance. Malik didn't argue the way people think arguing looks. No shouting, no insults. He just held a boundary. He asked plainly what Malik was being detained for. He asked if he was free to leave. He said he could identify himself, but he wasn't consenting to searches, and he wasn't going to do random hood-of-the-car theater without a reason. That made Kessler's voice jump up another level. Kessler stepped closer, too close. Malik took one small step back, not dramatic, just enough to keep space. Kessler interpreted that as defiance. He angled his body like he was preparing to grab Malik. This is the part people miss when they watch clips online. The escalation usually isn't one big moment. It's tiny choices stacked on the top of each other. Distance, tone, threats disguised as orders. That's how a routine interaction turns into a confrontation. Now, rewind. Malik Carter wasn't out there looking for trouble. He'd spent most of that day in suit and tie mode, rotating between protective work planning and coordination calls. He was in town on an advanced detail, not some fantasy spy mission. Real work, timing, routes, access points. He'd stepped away from his team for a few minutes to meet a contracted driver in the plaza. The driver got delayed. Malik waited where he could see the pickup area and keep situational awareness. Standard. He also didn't broadcast what he did for a living. Agents don't do that. He wore plainclothes, neutral jacket, clean haircut, no big logos, no tactical cosplay. Just a guy who looked like he belonged anywhere. Which is exactly why Kessler decided he didn't belong there. Kessler had been patrolling that district like he owned it. He had been with the department long enough to be comfortable. Too comfortable. He liked being the guy who handled things. He also had a pattern. Stop first, justify later. People around town knew it. They didn't always say it out loud. They just avoided him. That evening, he rolled into the plaza on a slow loop. He spotted Malik standing near the service lane. Black man, alone. Hands calm, not frantic, not acting guilty, just waiting. Kessler read that as a challenge. You could practically see it in how he parked. Not a normal pull-up. He cut the angle to block space. Quick stop, door open fast. That posture cops use when they want you to feel the weight of the uniform before they even speak. He approached Malik and started with suspicion, not greeting. Not, hey, you okay? Not, everything all right? It was straight into control mode. Malik responded the way trained professionals respond. He stayed polite. He didn't mirror hostility. He gave only what he needed to give. He kept his hands visible. He didn't reach for anything. Kessler kept pushing. Malik tried to end it clean. He said he was federal law enforcement and he was on duty. He said he could show credentials. He didn't do it fast. He didn't do it flashy. He did it the safe way. Slow movements, clear communication, hands staying where Kessler could see them. That's when the power chess game got real. Because Kessler didn't want Malik to be federal. He wanted Malik to be a suspicious guy so he could win the interaction. He wanted the story to end with compliance. Maybe a search, maybe a lecture, maybe cuffs for officer safety. The usual. Malik's federal status ruined that script. So Kessler tried to call it a bluff. He accused Malik of lying without using the exact word. He implied impersonation. He said people carried fake badges. He said he'd seen it before. He demanded Malik hand over whatever ID he had and kept saying he'd decide what was real. Here's the thing. Secret Service credentials aren't a library card. You don't just toss them to an agitated officer who's already escalating. Agents are trained on how to present identification safely. Malik followed that. He told Kessler where the credentials were. He asked if Kessler wanted him to retrieve them slowly. He kept his hands open and visible. All method. Meanwhile, the environment changed. A nurse in scrubs walked out of the pharmacy and slowed down. A delivery driver stopped near the curb and watched. The store manager hovered near the entrance, pretending to straighten a display, but his eyes stayed locked on the scene. Phones came out. Quietly. Not dramatic. Just reality in 2026. People don't trust it'll be handled internally anymore. They record first. Kessler noticed the phones. That should have made him chill out. Instead, it made him double down. Some officers treat witnesses like threats. Malik finally produced the badge and credentials. Not thrust forward. Not waved around. Presented in a controlled way so Kessler could read it without Malik stepping into his space. And for half a second, Kessler froze. His face did that quick recalculation people do when they realize they might have messed up. It wasn't remorse, it was risk assessment. Then he made the worst possible choice. He rejected it. He dismissed it like it was a fake. He talked over it. He acted like he'd caught Malik trying something. He said he was going to detain Malik until he could verify it. And he said it like Malik was some criminal who'd been caught mid-scam. That's the mask-off moment right there. Because verification is normal. The way Kessler handled it wasn't. He wasn't trying to confirm identity. He was trying to punish Malik for not folding. Malik didn't raise his voice. He didn't get baited. He didn't give Kessler anything to twist into resisting. He just stated clearly that he was a federal agent, that Kessler needed a supervisor, and that the situation was being recorded. Kessler's jaw tightened again. He looked around at the phones. He looked back at Malik. Then he reached for his radio. And that's when the chain reaction started. Dispatch, supervisors, and a level of oversight Kessler couldn't control. Kessler hit his radio and started talking like he was already writing the report in his head. He told dispatch he had a male subject claiming to be federal law enforcement. He said he needed verification. He left out the part where he'd escalated first. He left out the part where Malik had offered credentials calmly. He left out the crowd and the phones. Malik stayed in place, hands visible, body angled slightly away from Kessler's reach. That's not attitude, that's survival math. Kessler tried to regain control with volume and pace. He moved in tighter again, like he wanted to box Malik against the curb. He kept demanding Malik hand over the badge. Malik didn't comply with that part. He kept the credentials positioned where Kessler could read them without taking them. Smart, safe, standard. Kessler didn't like it. So he went for the threat that usually works on normal civilians: detainment for officer safety. He said Malik was going in cuffs until everything checked out. That's when Malik forced the moment into the light. He didn't bark, he didn't plead. He stated the consequences. He said Kessler was about to unlawfully detain a federal agent on duty. He said this would trigger notifications. He said he was requesting Kessler's supervisor immediately. He also said the entire interaction was on Bodycam and being recorded by witnesses. That last part mattered. You could feel it. Kessler glanced at the bystanders again. 2 phones were clearly up now, one held low, one held chest high. A third person had stopped near the coffee spot door with their camera pointed straight at the service lane. Kessler's eyes did the quick scan officers do when their confidence meets a liability. Then he tried a different tactic: the humiliation angle. He asked Malik if he even knew what Secret Service did. He implied Malik was impersonating and would be charged. He said he could make this easy if Malik just complied and stopped playing games. Malik didn't bite. He repeated the same points, clean and boring. Federal law enforcement on duty, credentials presented. Supervisor requested. No consent to searches, no sudden movements. And now, dispatch was responding. Dispatch asked Kessler for details: badge number, agency, name. Kessler gave Malik's name, but you could tell he didn't want to. He sounded irritated, saying it out loud like it tasted wrong. Dispatch asked him to spell it. He snapped the letters off fast. Then dispatch asked the question that started pulling the rug out from under him: did the subject provide credentials? Kessler hesitated. He answered in a way that tried to keep control of the narrative. He said yes, but he couldn't confirm authenticity. He said he was maintaining officer safety. He said he needed a supervisor on scene. Dispatch acknowledged, and then said they were contacting a sergeant. That's the first domino. Because once a sergeant hears possible federal credentials, the game changes. It's not optional. The department doesn't want a lawsuit. They don't want a federal complaint. They don't want a call from D.C. asking why their patrol officers cuffing a Secret Service agent behind a pharmacy. And Malik knew that. He didn't say it like a threat. He said it like a fact. Kessler tried to keep Malik frozen in place while he waited. He positioned himself like a gate. He watched Malik's hands like Malik was the problem. He asked again where Malik's vehicle was. He asked again who Malik was really meeting. He kept fishing for something he could justify on paper. Malik stayed tight. He gave nothing extra. Then the sergeant arrived. Sergeant Elena Park pulled in fast but not reckless. She didn't rush up yelling. She walked in, took a 3-second look at Kessler's posture, Malik's posture, and the crowd. She saw it immediately. She saw who was escalating. Kessler started talking the moment she stepped in. He tried to frame it like Malik was the one being difficult. He said Malik refused orders. He said Malik was argumentative. He said Malik was not cooperating. Park didn't accept the story at face value. She asked the simplest question in the world: what was the original reason for contact? Kessler gave a weak answer: suspicious person, loitering, service lane. Could be casing. Park looked around, cameras on the building, people recording. A normal public plaza, no posted, no trespassing signs in sight. Then she looked at Malik. She didn't ask him to perform respect. She asked for clarity. Malik presented credentials again, the same careful way. Park didn't snatch them. She read them. Her face changed. Not panic, not worship. Just that professional recognition of a situation that can cost the department money and careers if mishandled. Park asked Malik if he was on duty. Malik confirmed. Park asked Kessler if he had demanded Malik's badge be handed over. Kessler tried to talk around it. Park cut through it and told him to step back. That moment right there, that's when Kessler lost the room. Because now it wasn't Kessler versus Malik. It was Kessler versus reality. And reality had witnesses. Park got on her own radio and requested dispatch verify credentials through proper channels. She also asked for a lieutenant to be notified, because she wasn't about to carry this alone. Kessler stood off to the side, jaw tight, watching Park talk like he'd been betrayed. Then dispatch came back with the confirmation pathway. They didn't confirm everything over open air for obvious reasons. They confirmed enough. They indicated the agency contact line. They indicated the supervisor contact. Park nodded, got the number, and made the call. That call changed Kessler's body language more than anything else, because now it wasn't maybe. Now it was official process. While Park made the call, Kessler tried to start undoing the last 10 minutes with excuses. He said Malik's behavior raised red flags. He said he had to check. He said people impersonate officers. He said he was just doing his job. He tried to make it sound responsible. It didn't land, because everybody watching had seen the tone, the posture, the threats. They'd seen Kessler reject credentials. They'd seen him escalate when Malik stayed calm. They'd seen him get louder when phones came out. And Park had seen the same thing with a badge in her hand. Then the other agencies showed up. Without even showing up, Park got off the phone and her tone shifted. More formal, more careful. She told Malik calmly that his supervisor had been notified and was aware of the location. She told him they were going to conclude the contact immediately. Then she turned to Kessler and told him to stop speaking and to deactivate his ego before he made it worse. Kessler didn't listen. He couldn't help himself. He asked Malik, loud enough for the bystanders to hear, why Malik didn't just say he was Secret Service from the start. That was wild, because Malik had said it early. Kessler just didn't believe him. Malik didn't clap back. He didn't lecture. He gave one clean response through the narrator's reporting. He had identified himself, he had offered credentials, and Kessler had chosen escalation anyway. Park told Kessler to get in his car. Kessler started to protest. Park didn't argue. She gave him a direct order. He finally moved, stiff and angry, and walked toward his cruiser like someone walking away from a fight they thought they were winning. Park then spoke with Malik briefly, professional to professional. She asked if Malik wanted medical attention, if he felt threatened, if he wanted a formal complaint initiated on scene. Malik didn't make it dramatic. He requested the Bodycam and Plaza camera footage be preserved. He requested witness info be collected. He requested the incident be documented as a federal contact gone wrong. Park agreed, because she had no choice. And just like that, Kessler's routine stop turned into an evidence event. The bystanders didn't disperse right away. A couple people stayed to offer their names and numbers. One guy said he had the entire escalation on video from the first command. The store manager said the exterior cameras covered the service lane and the curb. Park collected what she could and told them the department would follow up. She knew, though. The videos were already leaving the scene. Because that's how it works now. A clip doesn't need the department's permission to go public. Malik left the plaza the same way he'd stood there, controlled, minimal, not giving anyone a reason to twist the narrative. Kessler sat in his cruiser, staring forward, trying to look like a man still in control. But the control was gone, because the Secret Service supervisor had the sergeant's number. The department lieutenant had been notified. Dispatch logs existed, body cam existed, witness video existed, all the receipts. By the next morning, Kessler's routine stop turned into a documented incident with 2 agencies attached to it. Internal Affairs locked down his body cam, cruiser GPS, and dispatch audio. The plaza cameras got preserved too. Witnesses handed over videos. Kessler tried to write a report that made it sound like verification, but the footage showed the real sequence. He escalated first, dismissed valid credentials, then threatened detention anyway. Secret Service leadership contacted the department through formal channels. That raised the heat instantly. Command staff, the city attorney, and supervisors got involved. Kessler was placed on administrative leave while the review moved fast, because this wasn't a messy case, it was clean evidence. Within weeks, the department fired him. Short statement, no long explanations. The clips had already spread online, and the public reaction was blunt. People weren't surprised by the aggression. They were surprised to see consequences happen quickly. The city updated procedures for interagency contacts and reemphasized detention standards and de-escalation, mostly to prevent another officer from trying the same stunt on camera. Malik didn't chase attention. He documented everything, made sure evidence stayed preserved, and kept working. His win wasn't loud. It was official. It was on record. If you were in Malik's position, would you have stayed that calm? Or would you snap back and given the officer the excuse he wanted? Drop your take in the comments. And subscribe for more stories where power trips meet consequences.
Hey, hold up a second. You live around here?
What's this about, officer?
Who's the kid with? That your child?
Yes. What's the reason you're asking?
All right, I need to see your ID.
There is no legal basis for that.
It's weird. You're out here with a stroller. Maybe the child is not yours.
If you have any questions about my child, say it plainly and tell me what facts you have.
This officer thought he was detaining just another civilian for a routine stop, but he had no idea he was actually interrogating a powerful federal judge. Watch as the tables turn the second the man with the stroller stops playing friendly and starts demanding the one thing that matters: articulable, reasonable suspicion. The officer tried to bluff his way through it. He couldn't. And by the time the truth came out, this wasn't a routine stop anymore. It was a public lesson in legal accountability that the officer couldn't talk his way out of. Where are you watching from? Country, state, city? Drop it in the comments. And if you like stories where people stay calm, know their rights, and make power answer for itself, hit like and subscribe. These situations don't change unless people understand what's allowed and what isn't. Now, rewind. It was a normal afternoon in a quiet neighborhood near a small park. Sidewalk traffic, parents, dog walkers. Nothing that screamed danger. The kind of place where people claim they want safety, but what they really mean is control over who looks like they belong. Julian Wells had left his home for a quick walk with his toddler in a stroller. He looked like what he was, a father doing a routine thing. No drama, no urgency. He moved at stroller pace, slow, predictable. A neighbor saw him and didn't see Dad. They saw a problem. They made a call, not about a crime, not about a specific act, just a label that's been used forever because it's vague enough to work. Suspicious person. Officer Trent Harlow responded like the label was proof. He pulled up fast, got out fast, and walked straight into Julian's path instead of approaching like this was a check-in. His posture did the talking. He wanted Julian stopped before he even knew what was being alleged. Harlow started with demands, identity, address, reason for being there. Then he stacked the questions that always show what the stop is really about: where the child's mother was, whether the child was his, why he didn't look familiar. The same old move. Make a normal situation sound abnormal, then treat confusion as guilt. Julian didn't escalate. He didn't perform. He didn't try to charm his way out either. He kept one hand on the stroller handle and kept his other hand visible. Calm face, calm voice. The kind of calm that doesn't read as fear, it reads as control. That calm annoyed Harlow, because Harlow wanted compliance, immediate, automatic, grateful compliance. Julian gave him something else: structure. Julian asked a basic question that forces a cop to commit. Was this a consensual conversation or a detention? Was he free to keep walking or not? He didn't say it like a challenge. He said it like he needed clarity for the record. Harlow tried the middle lane, not calling it a detention, but also not letting Julian leave. That gray zone cops use when they don't have enough to stop you legally, but don't want to give up the stop. Julian didn't accept the gray zone. He asked what specific facts created reasonable suspicion. Not a vibe, not a call. Facts that could be written down and defended. He kept it tight. No speeches, just the legal threshold? Harlow's answer shifted. First, it was a report. Then it was recent incidents. Then it was, you match a description without giving a description that meant anything. He kept moving the goalposts because he was fishing. Julian noticed every shift. This is where the power chess started. Julian signaled that he was documenting the interaction. He didn't wave the phone around. He didn't get theatrical. He just made it clear this encounter had a record now, and that the record would outlive whatever story the officer tried to build in the moment. Harlow's tone tightened again. His body angle changed. He stepped closer to the stroller like proximity itself was a tool. He kept talking like Julian owed him answers just because he was wearing a uniform, but Julian stayed in one lane, legality. He asked for the officer's name and badge number. He asked whether Harlow was ordering him to provide ID or requesting it. He kept forcing the officer to choose words carefully. That's what people don't realize. A stop lives and dies on language. When an officer gets sloppy, the whole thing collapses later. Harlow got sloppy. He treated Julian like refusing to chat was the same as doing something wrong. He implied that Julian was making it harder than it needed to be. That line always shows up when the officer doesn't have enough. It's pressure, not law. Julian didn't argue feelings. He didn't debate respect. He went straight back to the standard. What crime did the officer suspect? And what facts supported that suspicion? On the sidewalk, a couple people started paying attention. Not a crowd, just enough. A jogger slowed down. Someone across the street lifted a phone, not hiding it. That matters. Officers act different when they know the public can replay their choices. Harlow noticed the attention and tried to lock the scene down. He shifted from questions to instructions. He wanted Julian to stay put. He wanted control back. And that's when Julian made the quiet pivot that changed everything. He stopped engaging like a regular person trying to get through it. He started engaging like someone who'd spent years watching unlawful stops get justified after the fact. He called out the exact legal problem in real time. No clear reasonable suspicion, no lawful basis to prolong, no authority to treat a father with a stroller like a suspect because a stranger felt uncomfortable. Harlow still didn't know who Julian was. He just knew he wasn't getting the easy win. And the longer he stayed there without a solid reason, the worse it got for him. Officer Trent Harlow realized fast that Julian wasn't going to talk himself into trouble. No rambling, no nervous explanations, no apologizing for being outside. Julian kept the stroller still, kept his hands visible, and kept steering the interaction back to one issue, whether the officer had a legal reason to stop him. Harlow responded the way a lot of officers respond when they don't like that kind of calm. He tried to make the stop feel unavoidable. He said he was responding to a suspicious person call and treated that label like it automatically gave him authority. He didn't describe a crime. He didn't describe a specific action. He just kept leaning on the fact that someone called. Then he pushed for ID again. He didn't ask like it was optional. He asked like refusal would become the reason for the stop. Julian didn't hand anything over. He asked a clarifying question through the narrator's reporting, whether this was a voluntary contact or an actual detention. He needed the officer to pick one. Harlow tried to stay in the gray area. He kept Julian in place while refusing to say exactly what Julian was suspected of doing. That gray area is where a lot of bad stops live. If the person stays, the officer claims cooperation. If the person leaves, the officer claims flight. Either way, the officer keeps control. Julian didn't let the officer have that. Harlow changed angles and focused on the stroller. He looked down at the toddler, then back at Julian, and started asking questions about the child. Who the child was, where the child's mother was, whether Julian could prove he was the father. He framed it like concern, but it landed like suspicion. The questions weren't about safety. They were about forcing Julian to justify his family on a sidewalk. Julian kept his voice even. He didn't get loud. He didn't insult the officer. He asked for the legal basis again, this time tied directly to the new line of questioning. If the officer was suggesting something involving the child, he needed to state what he suspected and what facts supported it. Harlow couldn't support it, so he started cycling through new reasons. He referenced vague neighborhood complaints. He mentioned recent incidents without naming one. He hinted at kidnapping without saying it plainly. He suggested trespassing even though Julian was on a public sidewalk. Each explanation wasn't building into a coherent story. They replaced each other, depending on what sounded most serious in the moment. A jogger slowed down on the opposite side of the street. Someone on a porch stopped and watched. Another person raised a phone and recorded openly. Harlow noticed. His eyes kept flicking toward the cameras. His tone tightened. He tried to take control of the physical space. He stepped closer than he needed to. He angled his body so Julian had less room to move the stroller forward. He asked Julian to step away from the stroller for safety. That request wasn't neutral. If Julian stepped away, Harlow controlled the child's space and could reshape the scene however he wanted. If Julian refused, Harlow could label it non-compliance. Julian didn't step away. He stayed beside the stroller and kept his posture neutral. He made sure his hands stayed visible. He didn't give Harlow a reason to claim fear. He also didn't give Harlow control over the stroller. Harlow pressed again for ID and started narrating Julian's behavior like he was writing a report out loud. He described Julian as uncooperative. He implied Julian was causing the situation. That's another tactic. If the officer says it on scene, he hopes the person reacts and gives him something on camera that can be used later. Julian didn't react. He asked for the officer's name and badge number. He asked for a supervisor. He made it clear he would not consent to searches and would not answer investigative questions without a lawful basis for detention. He kept it procedural and calm, the way someone talks when they expect oversight. Harlow tried a pressure move that went beyond the stop. He implied that refusing to cooperate could lead to bigger problems. He hinted at taking Julian in to sort it out. He hinted at involving child services. He didn't state a charge. He didn't give a clear legal reason. He just tried to scare compliance out of Julian. That was when the bias showed itself more clearly. Harlow talked about the neighborhood like Julian didn't belong in it. He treated Julian's presence as suspicious by default, not because of anything Julian did, but because Julian didn't match the officer's mental picture of who belongs in that area. The stop stopped being about a call. It became about assumptions. Julian didn't turn it into a street argument about race. He treated it like a legal problem with a paper trail. He asked again for the specific facts that created reasonable suspicion. He repeated the supervisor request. He indicated that the encounter was being recorded and that he wanted the incident documented by name and badge number, not left as an informal stop that disappears. Harlow radioed for a supervisor. While they waited, the tension stayed in the air. Harlow kept his stance squared up like he couldn't afford to look wrong in front of the people watching. Julian stayed with the stroller, calm and still, like he understood that the safest move was to keep everything boring, visible, and recorded. And Julian made a choice that was going to change the rest of the interaction. He didn't announce it. He didn't posture. He reached for something in a controlled way, explained what he was doing before he did it, and prepared to show documentation that would force the conversation out of Harlow's emotions and into a world Harlow couldn't bluff his way through. The supervisor was still a few minutes out, and Officer Harlow was trying to hold the scene together long enough to look like he had control. He kept Julian in place without clearly saying he was detained. He kept asking questions that had nothing to do with a specific crime. He kept scanning around at the people watching and recording. Julian didn't let the officer's mood set the pace. He stayed beside the stroller. He moved carefully. He explained his movements before making them, because he wasn't giving Harlow any excuse to claim fear. He reached into his jacket pocket slowly and pulled out a wallet. He didn't flash anything like he was trying to win a flex contest. He held it in a way that made it easy for the officer's body camera to capture. He gave Harlow the minimum needed to understand what was happening. It was official federal judiciary identification. Harlow's face changed immediately. His voice lowered, his shoulders dropped, his eyes went back to the credential more than once, like his brain was reloading the whole situation. A second ago, he had been treating Julian like a problem to manage. Now he was standing in front of someone who could turn this sidewalk stop into a documented legal issue that wouldn't stay inside the department. Harlow tried to recover fast. He shifted into politeness. He started acting like this had been a simple misunderstanding and he was ready to clear it up. He tried to move the moment along like the last several minutes hadn't happened. He tried to reframe himself as cautious, professional, doing his job. Julian didn't accept that rewrite. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten the officer. He did something that hit harder than emotion. He explained exactly why the stop was unlawful and why the officer's apology wouldn't fix the damage. He pointed out the basic issue. Harlow had treated a vague call as enough to stop a person. Then, when questioned, he kept changing the suspected offense instead of stating one clear reason supported by facts. He also tried to escalate through intimidation and control instead of legal justification. And he aimed suspicion at Julian's parenting without any evidence. A child was involved, and that made the officer's choices more serious, not less. Harlow tried to interrupt. He tried to say he had to respond to calls. He tried to make it about procedure and safety. Julian kept it tight and direct. Responding to a call didn't mean detaining someone without reasonable suspicion. Feeling uncertain didn't create lawful authority. If Harlow couldn't articulate a specific crime and specific facts, the stop should have ended early. Instead, he prolonged it and pushed it into something it never needed to become. Then the supervisor arrived. Sergeant Alvarez pulled up, stepped out, and read the scene in about 2 seconds. Stroller, dad. Officer squared up, bystanders filming. That alone told her this was already a problem. Then she looked at Julian and caught the name. She didn't overreact. She didn't put on a show. Her posture shifted just slightly, the way people do when they realize they're standing in front of someone with real institutional power. She spoke with controlled professionalism and asked what happened. Harlow started talking immediately. He tried to get his version in first. He framed it like a routine check based on a call and implied Julian had been difficult. Alvarez didn't ignore him, but she didn't let him dominate. She asked one question that matters in every stop review. What facts created reasonable suspicion? Harlow gave the same vague answers he had been giving on the sidewalk. Call, concerns, recent issues, matching description, nothing clean, nothing concrete. Julian stayed calm and made the timeline simple for the supervisor. The stop started with a vague label. It grew into an ID demand without a stated offense. Then it shifted into questions about the child without evidence. Then it included threats and pressure to comply. Then it only cooled down after Harlow saw federal credentials. Alvarez understood what that meant. Even if she wanted to protect her officer, she couldn't protect that sequence if there was body camera footage and public video. Harlow tried the quick exit. He aimed for the easiest resolution. Let Julian go, apologize, and end it before it became a formal complaint. He tried to make it sound like everyone could just move on. Julian didn't let it stay informal. He told the supervisor he wanted the incident documented. He wanted the incident number. He wanted confirmation that body camera footage would be retained. He wanted the names and badge numbers recorded in writing. He also wanted a clear explanation of how suspicious person calls were being used in that neighborhood, because this stop followed a pattern that wasn't about safety. It was about who looked acceptable on a sidewalk. Alvarez tried to keep it calm and contained. She offered to talk off to the side. Julian stayed where the cameras could see. That wasn't for drama. That was for accountability. Private conversations disappear. Public records don't. Alvarez gave Julian the incident information and confirmed she would initiate review. She also directed Harlow to step back. That instruction wasn't loud, but it was firm. Harlow obeyed it instantly. A minute ago, he had been demanding compliance from Julian. Now he was taking commands and trying not to be seen as the reason this was about to blow up. Julian didn't gloat. He didn't embarrass him for sport. He made the point clearly because that was the real lesson of the moment. Authority without legal basis turns into harassment fast, and the public shouldn't need a federal title to be treated lawfully. Julian then ended the sidewalk part of it the same way he started it. Calm, controlled. He made sure the supervisor had what she needed to document the stop. He ensured the stroller was never out of his reach. Then he continued his walk, not because the officer allowed it, but because the detention had no lawful foundation to begin with. The video spread that same night. 2 angles. Calm father with a stroller asking for the legal basis. Officer escalating without stating a clear crime. By morning, complaints hit the department. Civil rights groups asked for bodycam footage, and reporters started calling. Then Julian's name got confirmed. People realized the random dad was a federal judge. That changed the whole conversation. If this happened to him, it was happening to everyone else who didn't have status. Internal affairs moved fast. They pulled dispatch logs, CAD notes, bodycam, and witness video. The review focused on basics. No clear, reasonable suspicion, shifting explanations, prolonged stop, and questioning the child's parentage without evidence. Officer Harlow got taken off patrol during the investigation. The department later sustained policy violations and disciplined him, with a serious suspension and mandatory retraining, plus a formal warning tied to escalation during a stop involving a child. They also reviewed whether he had a pattern of similar stops. Julian didn't accept a quiet apology. He pushed for changes. Clearer rules for suspicious person calls, required documentation of reasonable suspicion for pedestrian stops, stronger supervisor review, and body cam retention that couldn't be quietly trimmed. The bigger point stuck with the community. Constitutional rights shouldn't work only when the person stopped has a title. People started recording more, requesting supervisors more, and pushing the city to track stops and publish the data. So what would you have done in his place? Stay procedural or try to talk your way out? Comment your take, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more stories where calm beats control and accountability actually lands.
Hey,
What's going on here? Let me see your IDs.
What's the reason you need our IDs?
we got a call.
2 suspicious people hanging around.
Call for what exactly?
Just handle it. Show me ID and we're done.
No, you need to state a clear reason with facts.
This area's had issues. People casing places. You 2 look like you're watching.
Watching what?
What happened when a Riverside County patrol officer decided 2 black professionals eating lunch didn't fit the neighborhood and tried to turn a normal cafe table into a criminal investigation? The answer wasn't some messy argument. It was worse, because the officer didn't just pressure them for ID. He built a false story on the radio, and the recording caught every step of it. Quick question before we jump in. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or state in the comments. And if you're into stories where calm people don't get bullied and the truth actually sticks because someone hits record, tap like and subscribe. These cases don't go viral by magic. They go viral because receipts exist. So here's the moment it started going sideways. Officer Grant Holloway walked up like he already had the ending in his head. Adrian Brooks and Nicole Brooks sat at an outdoor cafe table, plates pushed aside, both reading. No raised voices, no crowd, just 2 people finishing lunch in public-facing seating that belonged to the cafe. Holloway didn't ask if everything was okay. He didn't start with basic courtesy. He started with control. He told them he'd gotten a call about 2 individuals hanging around. Vague, No description of a crime, no mention of a victim. Just that tone cops use when they want you to stop being a person and start being a situation. Then he pushed for ID. Not a request like, hey, mind if I see it? It came out like a demand, like they owed him paperwork for sitting in a chair they were paying to sit in. Adrian didn't get loud. He didn't perform. He stayed seated. He asked the clean question that always matters. What's the legal reason for this? Were they being detained? What crime was being investigated? Holloway didn't answer straight. He circled. He kept leaning on the call. He kept implying the area had standards and they weren't matching them. That little unspoken message. You know it. You're here, but you're not the kind of people who are supposed to be here. Nicole stayed calm too. She didn't argue feelings. She didn't lecture. She did something smarter. She started recording audio. Not in a dramatic way. No announcement. Just quiet documentation, while she asked simple questions that forced Holloway to either articulate a lawful basis or expose that he didn't have one. He responded by escalating the story. He said he believed they were casing nearby businesses and homes, said their reading was an act, said the couple vibe was cover, like two adults at lunch with some kind of con. And once he said that out loud, he tried to make it real with threats. He brought up loitering, then trespassing, even though they were sitting at a cafe table that was literally placed outside to be used by customers, even though staff hadn't complained, even though no one at the cafe had asked them to leave. That didn't slow him down. It fueled him. This is how these stops turn into traps. The officer doesn't need facts first. He just needs you to flinch. He needs you to get nervous, get angry, stand up too fast, say the wrong thing. Anything he can label as non-compliant after he's already decided you're suspicious. But Adrian and Nicole didn't give him that. They stayed seated. They kept their voices even. They kept their questions short and specific. What was the call exactly? What was the alleged crime? What behavior specifically looked like casing? Did he have a complainant? Had anyone from the cafe reported them? Holloway avoided the questions. He returned to the same vague statements. He tried to pull them into a conversation where he was the only one setting rules. He wanted them explaining themselves. He wanted them volunteering details. He wanted to fish. Nicole didn't bite. She let him talk. Let him fill the space. Let him stack assumption on top of assumption. Then Holloway took the step that changed everything. He keyed his radio and called for backup. And he didn't call it in like a normal public contact check. He upgraded the language. He framed it like a dangerous, suspicious person situation. He made it sound like he'd stumbled onto something bigger. Then he added the word that always poisons the record. Narcotics. Possible narcotics involvement. That's what he put on the air. No drug scene, no smell, no paraphernalia, no observed transaction. Just a label tossed into the system because labels stick. That radio call mattered more than whatever he said at the table. Because now it wasn't just one officer acting up. Now it was documented, time-stamped, logged, reasonable suspicion on paper, even if it was built from nothing. Nicole heard it. Adrian heard it. And you could almost feel the calculation shift. Because once an officer starts manufacturing allegations on the radio, the danger isn't just embarrassment. It's what comes next. A search. Hands on someone. A detention that turns into an arrest because someone decided to defend their pride. Holloway stood there like he'd just tightened the net, like backup was going to arrive and make the pressure work. Adrian didn't move. Nicole didn't move. Nicole kept recording. Holloway tried again with the ID angle, leaning harder now, acting like the radio call gave him authority he didn't have 5 minutes ago. He kept implying that cooperating would make it easier. The classic line. Give me what I want and I'll stop bothering you. But Adrian kept it tight. He didn't negotiate rights. He didn't plead. He kept returning to the same point. What's the lawful basis? and Holloway kept failing to answer. Minutes later, the backup car pulled in. Officer Elena Park stepped out, walked up, and immediately read the scene the way a competent officer does. Two people seated, calm, not matching the narcotics drama that was just broadcast. Park didn't mirror Holloway's energy. She didn't jump in barking orders. She looked at Holloway, then looked at the table, then looked back at him like she wanted one thing: facts. And right as she started pressing him for the actual reason for the stop, what crime, what evidence, what complaint, Holloway realized he wasn't the only one being recorded anymore. Because now there was a witness in uniform. Backup didn't arrive like a movie. No lights, no yelling, just Officer Elena Park stepping into the space and taking one look at the tone Holloway had created. She didn't start by demanding anything from Adrian and Nicole. That was the first difference. She started by checking the foundation. She asked Holloway what the call actually said, what he'd observed, and what specific crime he believed was happening. Holloway tried to give her the same vague stuff he'd been using at the table. Two people hanging around, not from the area, acting suspicious. He leaned into the casing story again, said they were watching storefronts in nearby homes. Park didn't accept it as is. She asked what behavior specifically looked like casing. What did they do besides sit and read? Did he see them approach doors? Did he see them test handles? Did he see them take photos? Did any business owner complain? Did cafe staff call? Holloway didn't have any of that. So he pivoted to ID, like identification would become the evidence he didn't have. He framed it like a simple request, but his tone stayed loaded, like refusal would prove guilt. Park asked the question that forces honesty. Were they detained, or was this voluntary contact? That's where Holloway started getting sharper. He didn't like being boxed in by policy. He tried to keep it squishy. He talked around it. He hinted at detention without saying detention. He wanted compliance without responsibility. Nicole didn't argue with him. She just kept doing what had worked from the start. Calm questions, clean phrasing, no extra emotion for him to grab. She asked Park in the same steady tone what the legal basis was for ID. She pointed out they were patrons seated at a cafe, not interfering with anyone. She didn't say it like a speech, she said it like a fact. Park glanced at the table, plates, receipts, reading material, then back to Holloway. You could tell she was comparing what she saw to what she heard over the radio. And that radio call started to matter right here. Park asked Holloway why he had broadcast possible narcotics involvement. That question hit different, because it wasn't coming from a civilian. It was coming from another officer, who now had her name tied to the response. Holloway tried to justify it with pure fog. He suggested it happens in the area, implied it was part of being cautious, hinted at behavioral indicators without naming one. He couldn't point to anything concrete because there was nothing concrete. Park didn't mirror his confidence. She looked irritated, not dramatic, just that professional kind of irritation, like someone watching a coworker create a mess and expecting everyone else to mop it up. She asked him again what he actually had. Holloway then tried a different angle. He started talking about loitering and trespassing again, like those words would scare Adrian and Nicole into handing over ID just to get the moment over with. Nicole corrected the record calmly. They were customers. It was cafe seating. Trespassing didn't even make sense, unless the business told them to leave. Park asked Holloway if the cafe had requested removal. He didn't answer cleanly. Adrian stayed composed the whole time. No sudden movements, no big statements. He watched Holloway the way you watch someone who's trying to improvise lies in real time. He let Park do her job because Park was doing what Holloway refused to do: anchor the situation to reality. And you could feel Holloway trying to regain control. He shifted his stance closer to the table again. He tried to talk over Park. He repeated the demand for ID. He spoke like he was the lead, like backup was there to support his version, not question it. Park didn't let him run the scene unchecked. She asked Adrian and Nicole if they felt safe. She asked if Holloway had explained what crime they were suspected of. She asked if they wanted a supervisor. That's when the power balance tilted. Hard. Because Holloway had been acting like he was untouchable. Like he could say, suspicious, and make it true. Like he could toss narcotics on the radio and nobody would challenge it. Park was challenging it, on the record, in front of witnesses, in front of a couple he'd already tried to bully. Nicole kept recording. Holloway didn't know that for sure, but you could tell he suspected it now. His sentences got shorter. He started choosing words more carefully. Too late. Then Adrian and Nicole exchanged a quick look. Not dramatic. Just the silent kind of coordination people have when they've been trained to stay calm under pressure. Adrian reached into his wallet. Holloway leaned in like he'd finally won something. Like the ID was the prize. Adrian didn't hand over a driver's license. He presented federal credentials. And the entire atmosphere changed in 1 second. Park's posture shifted immediately. She went from trying to understand to locking in. She looked at the credentials, then at Adrian, then at Nicole. Nicole followed with her own credentials. Different division, different focus, civil rights. Holloway's face changed. That confident edge dropped off him like a coat. His voice softened, then got weirdly polite. The same guy who had been throwing around arrest threats suddenly started acting like this was all a misunderstanding. Nicole made it clear this encounter had been recorded from the start. No threats, no yelling. Just that clean statement that lets someone know the game is over. Holloway tried to walk it back fast. He started talking about protocol, community complaints, just doing his job. He tried to reframe it as a normal check. He tried to pretend the narcotics broadcast hadn't happened. Park didn't play along. She asked him in plain language why he escalated to narcotics with no evidence. She asked him what he planned to do if they'd handed over ID and it didn't match his assumptions. She asked what his next step would have been. Holloway didn't have answers that sounded good out loud. Not with a witness officer standing there. Not with 2 federal agents sitting at the table. Not with a recording running. So he did what officers like him do when the script collapses. He asked for a supervisor. But at this point, that wasn't him taking control. That was him trying to get cover. Park radioed for a supervisor too, and the difference in her tone mattered. She didn't sound alarmist. She sounded precise, like she wanted the chain of command involved because this had already crossed a line. And while they waited, Holloway stood there trapped between 2 realities. The one he tried to create over the radio, where Adrian and Nicole were suspicious criminals. And the real one, where they were calm, documented, credentialed, and about to turn this entire encounter into a formal problem. Because now it wasn't 2 individuals hanging around. Now it was an officer who tried to manufacture a case in public. And the wrong couple heard him do it. The supervisor arrived fast. Not because the call sounded urgent, because Park's tone sounded careful. The kind of careful that tells command staff, there's a liability problem walking around in daylight. A watch sergeant stepped up first, eyes doing that quick scan. 2 civilians seated calmly, 2 officers standing, a cafe full of people pretending not to watch, while absolutely watching. The sergeant asked Holloway what happened. Holloway gave the cleanest version he could manage. He leaned hard on a call came in. He said he approached to check it out. He claimed he tried to identify them and they refused. He floated the casing angle again, softer now, less confident, like he knew it sounded thin. Then the sergeant asked Park. Park didn't sugarcoat it. She said she arrived, saw no crime, and couldn't get Holloway to articulate reasonable suspicion. She brought up the narcotics language on the radio and said she didn't see anything that matched that claim. That detail landed. You could see it on the sergeant's face, because now it wasn't just about manners. It was about what got broadcast into the system. Adrian and Nicole stayed seated through all of it. No posturing, no gotcha energy, just calm and clear. They identified themselves again, explained they were off duty and eating lunch, and pointed out that Holloway escalated without a lawful basis. Nicole told the sergeant she had an audio recording of the entire contact from the start. She didn't weaponize it. She stated it like a fact that needed to be logged. The sergeant asked if they were willing to share it. Nicole said yes, and also made it clear she wanted the request and transfer documented properly. Chain of custody language. The kind of language that tells a supervisor right away that this isn't going away with an apology and a handshake. The sergeant pulled Holloway aside a few steps, not far. Still in view. Still public. Holloway's body language changed again. Smaller, less aggressive. He started talking with his hands like he was explaining a misunderstanding. You could tell he was trying to frame it as standard policing that got misread. Park didn't leave him room for that. She stayed close and stayed factual. She didn't attack him personally. She kept it about the missing pieces. No complainant, no observed crime, no lawful detention basis, and a narcotics implication placed into the record with nothing behind it. The sergeant asked Holloway a simple question that matters more than anything else. What was the plan if Adrian and Nicole had handed over their IDs? Holloway didn't have a clean answer, because the plan wasn't about a specific crime. The plan was pressure. The plan was hoping something popped. The plan was forcing control and calling it policing. The sergeant's tone shifted. He stopped treating it like a confusing call. He treated it like an incident. He told Holloway to step back and stop engaging. Then he spoke directly to Adrian and Nicole in a more professional, restrained voice. He apologized for the disruption. He said he'd document the interaction and requested the recording through the proper channel. He asked if they wanted medical attention, anything like that. Standard damage control script. But you could tell he meant the document part, because he had to. This was now a recorded contact with federal agents. It involved threats of arrest and escalation language on the radio. You don't bury that. You can't. Nicole didn't threaten. She didn't talk about lawsuits at the table. She didn't need to. She said they would be making a formal report. She said they'd request all related dispatch and CAD logs, radio traffic, and Bodycam footage. She also said the narcotics implication needed immediate review because it wasn't supported by anything observable. The sergeant nodded. He didn't argue. That's how you know it's serious. When the supervisor stops debating and starts managing. Before they left, Adrian asked one final clarifying question, again calm, again precise. Were they free to go? The sergeant said yes. Adrian and Nicole stood up, gathered their things, and walked out like normal people. No victory speech, no staring contest. They didn't need the cafe to clap for them. The win wasn't the moment. The win was the record. Because what happened next wasn't loud. It was a procedural. And it moved fast. Within days, the internal review started. Holloway's dispatch history got pulled. Prior suspicious person calls, prior check IDs contacts, any pattern of escalating language, any pattern of vague calls turning into fishing expeditions. Supervisors don't like surprises. And this one came with federal attention attached. Nicole's side didn't treat it like a one-off. She treated it like a data point, a potential pattern. She requested the radio traffic and the call notes that used the narcotics wording. She requested Holloway's reports. She requested training records. She requested any prior complaints with similar themes. And Park became a key witness whether she wanted that or not. She was the officer on scene who challenged the basis and questioned the escalation. Her account didn't need drama. It just needed to be consistent. It was. Holloway got pulled from the street pending review. At minimum, he didn't get to keep freelancing contacts the same way while an investigation ran. That decision didn't require a public announcement. Departments do it quietly all the time. The point is, the shift happened. Immediately. The department also had another problem. that narcotics language on the radio. It wasn't a private thought. It was an official broadcast that could have justified a search or a detention if the wrong officer heard it and ran with it. Supervisors hate that because it's how departments end up paying big money and losing public trust at the same time. So training memos started circulating. Reminders about articulating reasonable suspicion, reminders about not inflating calls, reminders about how a call came in doesn't replace legal standards. Was it because they suddenly grew a conscience? No. It was because the facts were ugly and recorded. Adrian and Nicole didn't turn it into a social media spectacle. They didn't have to. They routed it through channels that actually force outcomes. Internal investigations, records requests, oversight, and federal review. That's the part people miss. Accountability doesn't always look like a viral clip. Sometimes it looks like someone calmly gathering evidence and letting the system deal with what it can't defend. In Holloway, he learned the worst lesson a bully cop can learn. The person you're trying to embarrass might be the person who understands the rules better than you do, and they might be recording while you talk yourself into a corner. So let me ask you, if you were Adrian or Nicole, would you have stayed seated and kept it calm? Or would you have walked away the second he got weird? And if you've ever had someone treat your normal presence like a threat, what did you do? Drop your thoughts in the comments, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe if you want more real modern stories where receipts beat intimidation every time.
Ma'am, I need your ID.
Sir, explain to me what's the reason you stopped me.
It's a welfare check. I need to know who you are.
I did nothing wrong, so you have no legal reason for demanding my ID.
Your vehicle matches something we're looking at.
Matches what call, what description, what incident?
Ma'am, this can go a different direction if you keep pushing.
This cop thought he was teaching a lesson to a random citizen, but he was actually walking into a legal nightmare. He came in hot, like he expected instant compliance. Then you could see it. His whole approach changed the moment he realized the woman he was pressing for ID wasn't just anyone. He demanded her identification. He wasn't prepared for her authority. Tell me where you're watching from, state or country in the comments. And if you like stories where people stay calm, know the law, and make misconduct expensive, hit like and subscribe. These encounters happen fast. Being ready matters. Now rewind. Avery Cole pulled into a legal street parking spot near a small downtown park. Midday, people walking by, a couple benches, nothing isolated. She wasn't blocking a driveway, no fire lane, no illegal tint issues. She shut the car off and stayed inside for a few minutes, working on her phone before a meeting across the street. A patrol car rolled past slow. The officer's head turned towards her vehicle. The patrol car kept going, then looped back. Officer Grant Holloway parked behind Avery at an angle that wasn't friendly, not fully blocking her, but close enough to signal pressure. He got out right away and walked up with a fast pace and a hard posture. He didn't start with a greeting. He started with a demand for identification. Avery didn't start digging around the car. She kept her hands visible. She lowered the window slightly, enough to speak. She asked what the reason was. Specifically, what crime he suspected. Holloway didn't give a specific crime. He said the area had issues. He referenced complaints. He said she'd been sitting there too long. He repeated that he needed her ID. Avery kept her voice even. She asked if she was being detained or if this was a voluntary contact. Holloway didn't answer that directly. He repeated the demand and framed it like it was non-negotiable. He acted like refusing ID was automatically suspicious. Avery asked again if she was free to leave. Holloway changed the reason. He called it a welfare check. He said he needed to make sure she was okay, but he still kept the same demand-first approach. No, are you all right? No. Do you need help? Just ID. Avery asked, what about if her looked distressed or in danger? She was parked legally in daylight, sitting upright, phone in hand. Holloway shifted again. He said the vehicle matched a description. He didn't say what description. He didn't say what incident. He didn't give a time or a direction of travel. He stayed vague, then repeated the ID demand like the vagueness was enough. Avery didn't argue the whole world. She narrowed it back down to the law. She asked what the specific reasonable suspicion was and whether she was being detained. A woman walking a dog slowed down on the sidewalk. She looked at the officer's stance at the window and pulled out her phone. She started recording from a few yards away. Holloway noticed the phone. He didn't step away. He kept going. He tried to pull Avery into small talk questions that weren't small talk. Where she was coming from. Where she was headed. Why she was parked there. How long she'd been sitting. Each question had the same pressure behind it. Answer so he can justify the stop after. Avery didn't volunteer extra. She stated the basics. She was parked legally. She wasn't committing a crime. She repeated the question that matters. Detained or free to go? Holloway raised his voice slightly and repeated the ID demand again. He hinted at escalation. He hinted at calling backup. He framed her calm questions as making it difficult. Avery asked for his name and badge number. He gave it. She repeated it clearly so it would be captured on the recording. Then she requested his supervisor. Holloway pushed back. He said it wasn't needed. He said he could handle it. He stayed at the window, trying to keep control of the moment. Avery didn't move off it. She requested the supervisor again. Holloway started talking about people sitting in cars and what that usually means in that area. He didn't tie it to a specific report. He didn't tie it to her behavior beyond being parked. He returned to the same demand. ID. Avery gave one more clean line. If he was detaining her, he needed to state the legal basis. If he wasn't detaining her, she wasn't required to provide ID. Holloway responded by repeating the demand again. Avery waited until the pattern was clear on camera. Then she identified herself. She gave her name and her title, the district attorney for the county. You could see the shift right away. His voice changed. His posture changed. His wording changed. The demand turned into justification. The command tone turned into professional tone. He started talking like it was routine and harmless. Avery didn't match his energy. She kept hers the same. She repeated the request for a supervisor. She told him she wanted the interaction documented and the body camera preserved. Holloway stepped back from the window. The bystander kept recording. Avery stayed parked, calm, still. No shouting, no drama. Just a legal boundary drawn in plain language. Avery had said who she was. District attorney. The phone on the sidewalk kept recording. Officer Holloway stayed near the driver window, but his approach changed. Less command, more explanation. He started talking like the whole thing was routine. Avery didn't argue tone. She forced clarity. She asked one question and kept returning to it. Was she being detained? Holloway didn't give a clean yes or no. He tried to keep it in the gray zone. He kept asking for ID while avoiding the word detained. That's a common move. If he says it's voluntary, she can refuse and leave. If he says it's a detention, he needs legal grounds. Avery tightened the lane again. She said she was parked legally. She said she hadn't committed a crime. She asked him to state the specific reasonable suspicion for a detention, not the area, not complaints. A specific suspected offense tied to specific facts. Holloway offered a new reason. He referenced a description again, still vague. Avery asked what description from which call and what the reported crime was. She asked whether dispatch had broadcast anything matching her vehicle. She asked whether he ran her plate before approaching and what that return showed. Holloway avoided details and repeated the ID demand. Avery didn't raise her voice. She gave structure. She described the difference between a consensual contact and a detention in plain terms. She said he could talk to her voluntarily, but he couldn't order her to identify herself without lawful grounds. She said if he believed a crime was happening, he needed to say which crime and why. Holloway tried a pressure tactic. He framed her refusal as non-compliance. He warned her that refusing to identify could go bad. He hinted at calling more units. He said he was trying to keep it simple. Avery didn't mirror that. She asked for his supervisor again. Holloway resisted that, too. He said it wasn't necessary. He said he was handling it. He tried to keep the conversation between the two of them. The bystander's camera stayed up. No yelling, no interference, just a clear record. Avery asked if his body camera was on. Holloway said it was. Avery then said she wanted the supervisor to respond to the scene, and she wanted all footage preserved. She said she was requesting it as a formal matter. That moved it from random stop to paper trail. Holloway tried another pivot. He said he was doing a welfare check. Avery asked what indicators triggered it. He didn't point to anything concrete. Avery repeated, if there was no specific reason to believe she needed assistance, then it wasn't a welfare check. It was an investigation without a stated crime. Holloway repeated the ID demand again. Avery responded by repeating the legal fork again. Either she was detained with reasonable suspicion stated on the record, or she was free to leave and didn't have to provide ID. He didn't answer directly. He changed the subject to her attitude. He said she was being difficult. He referenced cooperation, like it was a legal requirement. Avery kept it short and controlled. She said she was cooperating with lawful instructions. She said she wasn't required to surrender rights to make an officer comfortable. She asked for the supervisor again. Holloway finally stepped away a few feet and used his radio. While he did that, Avery stayed still, hands visible, no sudden movements, no searching for documents. She didn't give him a reason to claim furtive anything. The bystander kept recording from the sidewalk, capturing the patrol car angle, the officer position, and the fact Avery was simply parked. A few minutes later, a second patrol unit arrived, then a supervisor vehicle behind that. Sergeant Lena Park stepped out and walked up with a different posture, less performance, more assessment. She looked at Avery's car, then at Holloway, then at the bystander recording. Sergeant Park asked what the stop was for. Holloway tried to summarize it as a check. He referenced the area again. He referenced the description again. He said Avery refused to identify. Sergeant Park then asked the same key question Avery had been asking. What specific reasonable suspicion did he have that Avery had committed, was committing, or was about to commit a crime? Holloway didn't give a clean answer. He stayed general. Avery spoke to the supervisor the same way she'd spoken to Holloway. No insults, no heat. She stated she was parked legally. She stated the officer demanded ID without stating a crime. She stated she asked multiple times if she was detained and didn't receive a clear response. She stated she wanted the encounter documented and she wanted body cam and dispatch records preserved. Sergeant Park asked for Avery's name. Avery gave it, then repeated her title, District Attorney. Sergeant Park's face stayed controlled, but her tone sharpened in a different way, focused, procedural. She acknowledged Avery and shifted her attention back to Holloway. Sergeant Park asked for his body cam status and the call details. She asked whether he had a CAD entry. She asked what he observed before initiating contact. She asked whether he could articulate reasonable suspicion. Avery didn't add anything extra. She let the supervisor do the questioning. The sidewalk camera kept rolling, and right there the whole scene changed, from cop versus citizen to supervisor managing a liability in real time. Sergeant Lena Park stood at the driver window for a few seconds, just taking in what was on display. Patrol car angled behind a legally parked vehicle. An officer positioned like it was a stop. A bystander filming from the sidewalk. A calm driver asking basic legal questions. Park asked Avery for her name again, like she wanted it clearly stated on the record. Avery gave it. Then she restated her role. District Attorney for the county. That's when the scene tightened. Park didn't react loudly. She didn't need to. She shifted into damage control mode. Her questions turned sharper and more specific, not emotional, procedural, focused. She asked Officer Holloway what his legal basis was for demanding ID from a person parked legally. Holloway tried to give a layered answer. He referenced the area. He referenced crime patterns. He referenced a description. He referenced welfare concerns. Park didn't accept the bundle. She separated each claim. She asked which claim happened first, what he observed before he approached, what exact facts made him believe Avery was involved in a specific crime, what report he was responding to, whether dispatch sent him to this vehicle or he chose it on his own. Holloway kept his answers general. Park kept her questions narrow. Avery stayed quiet while Park questioned him. When Avery spoke, she didn't argue feelings. She recited the sequence. Park behind her at an angle. Demand for ID. No crime stated. Multiple requests for clarification. Multiple attempts to get a yes or no on detention. Shifting reasons. Supervisor requested. Camera recording. Park asked Avery if she had been told she was free to leave. Avery said no. Park asked if Holloway told her she was being detained. Avery said no. Park asked if she had been accused of any specific offense. Avery said no. Park then asked Holloway in front of the bystander camera whether Avery was being detained. Holloway gave a reluctant answer. He tried to say it was a check. Park pushed again. Detained, yes or no? He finally said she wasn't detained. Park immediately told him to step back from the vehicle. And that's the moment everybody could see the shift. Not because of a dramatic speech, because the power moved. The supervisor took control of the scene. The officer lost the ability to keep freelancing. Avery asked Park for two things, clearly and calmly. Confirmation that she was free to leave. Confirmation that all recordings and logs would be preserved. Park said Avery was free to go. Avery didn't leave yet. She kept it professional and locked down the details. She asked Park to identify Holloway by name and badge number for the record. Park did. Avery repeated it back so the sidewalk recording captured it. Then Avery asked Park for the incident number, or CAD reference, for the contact. Park didn't have it on the spot. She said she'd generate it. Avery said she wanted it provided to her office that day. Not next week. Not whenever. Holloway stood off to the side, no longer talking at the window like he owned the moment. His tone had already changed once when Avery identified herself. It changed again under Park's control. He stopped giving commands. He stopped repeating the ID demand. He stopped trying to turn cooperation into a requirement. Avery addressed the biggest issue out loud, so the record didn't get rewritten later. She stated that the demand for ID came before any claim of a specific crime. She stated that the reasons changed multiple times. She stated that she was treated like a suspect without a stated basis. She stated the interaction needed review for policy and constitutional compliance. Park didn't argue with her. Park kept it in the lane of procedure. She said she'd handle it through the chain. Avery asked one more question that mattered. She asked whether Holloway's body camera had been activated before he approached the car. Park looked at Holloway and asked the same. Holloway said it was on. Avery said she wanted confirmation that it would be flagged for preservation and not overwritten. Park acknowledged that request. The bystander on the sidewalk didn't move closer, didn't interfere, just kept the phone up. That footage mattered because it showed the whole setup: the legal parking, the patrol car angle, the officer posture, the supervisor arrival, and the moment the stop dissolved after the legal authority got named. Avery then ended it clean. She said she'd be requesting dispatch logs, body cam, and any reports or notes tied to the encounter. She said her office would review it. She said she expected full cooperation. No threats, no flexing, just process. Then she left. Normal, legal, calm. And the reason this hit so hard wasn't that she was the district attorney. It was that nothing about her rights should have depended on that. By that evening, the sidewalk video wasn't just sitting on somebody's camera roll. Maya, the woman with the dog, posted it with a simple caption about a legal parking space, an ID demand, and the tone change after the title came out. She didn't edit it into a movie. She clipped it into short segments so people could see the sequence. Demand first, reasons later, supervisor arrival, then the sudden politeness. It spread fast because it was familiar. People recognized the pattern right away. The way an officer treated a calm person like a suspect without a stated crime. The way just checking turned into a pressure campaign. The way the whole thing softened only when status entered the chat. Within 24 hours, local accounts picked it up. Then community pages. Then a legal commentary channel stitched it with on-screen timestamps. And the simple question everyone asked, what was the reasonable suspicion? The department responded the way departments usually do at first. A short statement. Words like reviewing. Words like context. Nothing specific. No admission. No apology. That didn't last long because this time the person targeted wasn't stuck begging for records. Avery's office sent formal preservation requests the next morning. Bodycam, dispatch audio, CAD logs, any notes, any supervisor reports, any unit-to-unit radio traffic. She requested it as an official matter tied to an incident involving a deputy district attorney's office holder, which meant the internal handling had to be careful and documented. Internal affairs opened a case, not a "we talked to him," a real file, case number, assigned investigator. And the department had another problem, the bystander video. Because if the body cam missed the start, the sidewalk video still showed the approach, the initial demand, and the lack of a stated crime. It also captured the supervisor asking for specific facts and the officer not giving clean answers. That outside angle made it harder to reshape later. Local reporters started calling. The city council got emails. The police chief's office got requests for the stop policy and ID procedures. Community groups asked why a legal parked car triggered enforcement energy at all. Then people came forward. Not to talk about Avery, to talk about Officer Halloway. A string of similar stories showed up in the comments and in inboxes. Same zone, same style. A cop who treated questioning the stop as a personal challenge. Stops that started with control and ended with a vague, "be careful," after wasting someone's time. Avery didn't hold a press conference. She didn't need to. She moved like a prosecutor. Quiet, documented, immediate. Her office requested a meeting with the police chief and city legal counsel. Not a photo op. A policy meeting. She asked for 3 things. 1, the full record of the incident, unedited, with preservation confirmation. 2, Officer Halloway's complaint history and any prior supervision notes. 3, a review of how patrol officers were trained on consensual encounters, detention standards, and ID demands. The department tried to keep it narrow. 1 misunderstanding. 1 contact. That didn't hold because the video showed shifting pretexts and an ID demand without a stated crime. It also showed the moment the rules seemed to change when the title came out. People didn't miss that. A few weeks later, the consequences started stacking. Officer Halloway got pulled off patrol pending investigation. Desk duty. No proactive stops. No field discretion without oversight. Internal Affairs interviewed the supervisor and reviewed the logs. They checked whether he created a CAD entry after the fact, whether he had any dispatch basis for the description claim, and whether policy required a reason before demanding ID. The department issued a training memo. It focused on reasonable, articulable suspicion, the limits of welfare checks, and how to handle consensual encounters without turning them into detentions. Not a vague memo. A reminder tied to real discipline risk. Then came the part officers hate most. Documentation that sticks. The department added the incident to their early warning tracking for repeat complaints. That meant every future complaint hit heavier. It also meant supervisors had to sign off on certain actions. More oversight, less freelancing. Avery also made sure the community understood the actual lesson, because the headline wasn't, DA gets harassed. The headline was, this is what happens to regular people when nobody important is sitting in that seat. So she did something strategic. She partnered with a local legal clinic and recorded a short rights education segment for the county site. Simple language, no legal flexing, just practical steps. Ask if you're being detained. Ask what crime is suspected. Keep your hands visible. Don't reach around the car. Record if it's legal in your state. Stay calm and repeat your question. Get names and badge numbers when you can. Ask for a supervisor if the encounter turns into pressure without explanation. She also emphasized a point people avoid. Filming isn't about winning. It's about accuracy. It stops the story from changing later. As for Holloway, the outcome didn't end with a dramatic firing announcement on TV. Real accountability usually looks less cinematic and more administrative. The investigation resulted in documented policy violations. The department imposed discipline. His ability to initiate discretionary contacts got restricted. His evaluations changed. Future promotions got complicated. His supervisors now had a paper trail that followed him. And the community got something rare. Proof on video of how quickly authority becomes negotiation when the person in the car has power back. Avery never celebrated it like a win. She treated it like a warning sign with a receipt. Because the point wasn't that she could defend herself. The point was that she shouldn't have needed a title for the law to apply. So, here's the question for you. If you were sitting in that car, calm, legal, and respectful, would you have known what to ask? Would you have recorded? Would you have stayed steady when the pressure started? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this with someone who needs it. And if you want more stories like this, realistic, modern, and focused on accountability, make sure you're subscribed because more are coming.